Hello? 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 Is this mic loud enough? Do you guys hear me fine?
Yes.
Alright, thank you. Alright. We start in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. All praise is due to God, the Lord of the world, and may peace and blessings of God be upon his prophet Muhammad and his family and companions. Students, faculty, and friends, and colleagues, I greet you all with the Islamic greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is the last event in a series of events sponsored by the Muslim Student Union at UC Irvine. The Muslim Student Union is a religious student organization which aims to provide a comfortable space where students develop into confident, spiritual, and moral and high-achieving leaders who in turn are a positive influence and example for their surrounding communities. This week, titled Palestinian Liberation Week, Getting to the Roots of the Occupation, aim to educate and raise awareness on campus about the plight of the Palestinian people, who have been living under illegal occupation for almost 64 years, with the hope that this knowledge will turn this knowledge will turn into action. Let it be iterated again that hatred of any particular group on the basis of their race, color, ethnicity, or religion, including people of the Jewish faith, is not and will not be tolerated. We will be the first to speak out against any of these injustices, just as we would speak up against any other form of racism, no matter what group is being targeted. Although this goes without saying, the MSU strives to explicitly state its beliefs nonetheless. It is absolutely hypocritical and immoral to label anyone who has the courage to stand up and speak out against our apartheid policies of Israel as anti-Semitic. This week's aims, in short, is to call for an end to the oppression of the indigenous Palestinians, just as it would make sense to call for the end of the oppression that took place in Nazi Germany or apartheid South Africa. It is absolutely imperative that we call for an end to the 64 years of systematic subjugation and repression of the Palestinian people. We will be having a question and answer session after the panel. Please hold all your questions till the end. Co-sponsors for this week include Students for Justice in Palestine, Afghanistan Development Project, Alianza, Asian Pacific Student Association, Central American Student Association, Dreams at UCI, Kababayan, Radical Student Union, Society of Arab Students. But before we begin today's event, we would like to begin with some verses from the Muslim holy book, the Quran.
I'm going to be reading ayat 42 and 43 from Surah Al-Ma'idah, the table spread. We use the Quran as a source of guidance, and this is how we get our ideologies. It provides us with examples to follow, what not to follow, what to do, and what not to do. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم سماعون للكذب أكالون للسحت فإن جاءوك فاحكم بينهم أو أعرض عنهم وإن تعرض عنهم فلن يضروك شيئا وإن حكمت فاحكم بينهم بالقسط إن الله يحب المقسطين. The translation: They like to listen to falsehood to devour anything forbidden. So if they come to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, either judge between them or turn away from them. If you turn away from them, they cannot hurt you in the least. And if you judge with justice between them. Verily, Allah loves those who act justly. Thank you.
Thank you for the recitation. Before we begin and have our panel come up, we would like to share the MSU introduction video. Here it goes.
Assalamu alaikum and hello. My name is Roswan Kabir.
My name is Majiha Shahaboon and I'm a third year political science major at UC Irvine.
My name is Aslan Akhbar. I'm a fifth year at UCI. I'm doing my master's in biotechnology.
My name is Nida Chowdhury. I'm a recent alumni from UC Irvine. I graduated in 2009. I studied English and film and media studies.
I'm an aspiring mad scientist, journalist, family therapist, butcher, and basketball player.
My name is Nasser Mullen, and I go to the University of California, Irvine. Being a college student in America, you have certain things that you want to get out of college that society tells you you gotta get, and I'm kind of like a 17-year-old kid coming to college. You wanna be able to get those things too, but at the same time you're Muslim. So how are you gonna be able to link those two together? And so MSU is a great way to do that.
On a very basic level, the Muslim organization is there to provide Muslims a place to pray. And from that stems different relationships that they develop. That means you have Muslims who develop friendships that last a really long time. And that means that from those friendships, you develop relationships that are based on your faith in God and the desire to do everything for His sake. Because of those relationships, Muslims at UCI have been able to do amazing things, like raise money for disaster-stricken places like Haiti, Pakistan, Katrina, as well as do social activities like the cook-off, the Brothers versus Sisters cook-off. In addition, we're on competitions, and because of those relationships that are developed through the Muslim organization, we're able to develop ourselves spiritually, politically, and emotionally.
The best thing about having other Muslims on campus is the sense of community you get. When I'm going to school, it kind of feels like I'm going home again, just because there's so many people there. They're always happy to see you, happy to hear what you have to say. Sometimes it's a little bit nicer than home, but that's what I like about it.
Muslim Club at UCI provides one of the most cohesive organizations that I've ever been a part of.
It's a family. It's almost a way of life.
It's able to combine both the social aspect that you find in fraternities and sororities, and at the same time aspects of ethnic cohesion, social belonging, whether it's social activism, just trying to do something better for the community, trying to do something better for UCI. It provides all those aspects.
It provides the atmosphere of someone to grow in, to become a citizen of humanity, and to excel in every aspect of someone's life.
Whether it's the Red Cross Club that puts on blood drives, the Muslim Club at UCI, Muslim community put on blood drives. It provides that brother and sister that everything you can ever imagine, that club will provide, it provides it.
I feel that our campus would have a different vibe and atmosphere to it if the Muslim organization was not there.
One word that describes UCI is life.
An opportunity.
UCI means personal growth.
Family.
Challenging.
Lively.
Priceless.
Can I please now have the hand up? Oh, and please, if you guys are seated far back, if you can come in closer just to fill in the spots in the front, thank you. Seated from my left to right are Asad Shaina, Tahir Hezola, Osama Shabek, and Anas Reishi. These four individuals are the 11 students who stood up and spoke out during Ambassador Michael Orr's speech at UC Irvine on February 8, 2010, only to be punished by the university and later prosecuted by the Orange County District Attorney. Before we get into the Q&A, we would like to ask a few questions just to give you guys more information about these 4 people. We can start off by introductions. Can you please introduce yourself again with your name, your background, including your standing at the time of your protest, the current situation in terms of everyday life, and also if you can iterate or share on about your activism you are currently involved in.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Asad Traina, or Asad Traina. I transferred to Cal State LA, to UCI from Cal State LA. So this is my 4th year at UCI. I graduated with my bachelor's from here last June. This is the end of my 1st year in the master's program here in biotechnology. And I've been a part of MSU most of that time. Like towards the end of my 1st year, I got more involved, but for most of the time I've been a member of MSU. No.
My name is Paul Hezbollah. At the time of the protest, I was a junior at UC Riverside. I'm finished now. Got my degree in political science and international relations. And I'm currently actually involved with a nonprofit organization called American Muslims for Palestine. And I'm still active on the Palestine cause.
My name is Usama Shabay. I was a 4th year at the time of the protest here at UC Irvine. I graduated in National Studies and Economics. I'm from San Diego. I am not in school right now. Okay. I was just saying hello to somebody. I completely lost train of thought. I'll be back in school in the fall, though.
Where?
It's his turn.
So Sam Shabay got into Harvard Law. Marshall, he's doing big things. My name is Anas Qureshi. I'm currently a 5th year. I graduated in the fall, but I'm taking extra classes. At the time of the protest, I was a 3rd year, and I was like fresh out of around the beach. Knew nothing about protests, knew nothing about I knew what Palestine was, but I didn't know anything much about the conflict or anything. So my 1st year, I learned a lot, and yeah, so pretty much that's it.
Okay, great. Okay, next follow-up. What was your motivation behind speaking out that night?
I don't know what's wrong with 7. Okay, there was a lot of motivations. Where should I begin? So, I'm personally from Gaza myself. My family's from Gaza. My father was born in Gaza. All his aunts and uncles live in Gaza, and a lot of his cousins as well. So we have a lot of relatives over there. I grew up watching what's been happening in Palestine all my life. So political science came as a natural thing to me. As a matter of fact, when I used in classes, it would be like relearning some of the stuff I had already learned just watching Al Jazeera. So personally, I was connected to the Gaza Strip, especially since my family's originally from there. And of course, Osam and I had the opportunity to visit us, as he mentioned earlier, today, 2009, right after the massacre there, and it gave us perspective as to what exactly was happening on the ground. So I think that those 2 things fueled my passion for what I was doing next.
I'm actually not Palestinian, but I have grown up knowing about the Palestinian cause my entire life. And I think it's something even, my parents come from a 3rd world country. So coming from a 3rd world country, and when you grow up understanding the issues of colonialism and occupation and oppression, you grow up able to sympathize with the Palestinian cause. And even, actually, ironically enough, at the time of the protest, a few of our friends had gone to Mali as part of a malaria campaign, fighting against malaria. And in downtown Mali, this is, a country in Africa, in downtown Mali, there's a mural, and on one part of the mural is a picture of Malcolm X. And then on another part of the mural is actually a picture of the Dome of the Rock. And the Dome of the Rock symbolizes the Palestinian struggle against the occupation and the Palestinian struggle against everything that has been going on for the past 60 years. And so, I mean, me not being Palestinian, I still grew up around it, and I had that kind of idea in my mind about the Palestinian cause. So I wouldn't say the trip to Gaza definitely helped cement that, but even if I hadn't gone to Gaza, I still think I would have protested. It just made it a little bit more personal going to Gaza. And I think, I mean, even just going from that trip and seeing everything that happened in the Gaza Strip, you realize that Israeli soldiers came into Gaza and decided to play Call of Duty, modern warfare with people's lives. There really was no other way to depict it. Every house is just riddled with bullet holes, if it's lucky to still be standing. And you really see that there was no compassion, there's no humanity in the way in which Israel dealt with and continues to deal with Gaza and the West Bank and the Palestinian people for the past 60 years. And so, I mean, you have Michael Warren come, really, it's time to send a message that's not going to be tolerated.
So I was in a very interesting position after the situation. I'm from Pakistan, so it's kind of looked down upon, to protest, and my parents were, not really supportive in the beginning. I knew they got supportive afterward. But my motivation came from learning about the conflict within like the last 3 years, like knowing about it, learning about it. So after I came to UCI, MSU tends to, they have a lot of interest in different conflicts around the world, and Palestine was a big one. And me learning about this issue, it was kind of black and white to me, what's right and what's wrong, and the truth and what's being portrayed. And as I was learning about it and learning about Michael Oren and his presence on campus, I felt like it was the right thing to do. If Hitler came, and he was giving a speech, everybody would stand up because what he did was wrong, and what Michael Oren did, or he keeps on doing, is wrong. He's whitewashing the truth, and showing America showing like a face of Israel that's not really right. What they're doing and what they did in Gaza after the massacre that occurred. So I mean, that was like my motivation to like speak out against Michael Oren and like give what I can to the cause.
So I think most of the things, or a lot of the things at least, I share in common with my friends here. But I think one particular thing that really upset me, that really motivated me to protest that particular event, was how the university reacted to his presence. So when Michael Oren came, he was in Pacific Ballroom A, B, C, and D. So that's like you go down these stairs outside and you go down another set of stairs. It's the biggest ballroom, as far as I know, in the entire university. It's like I think they had 700 seats. Yeah, I know they had 700 seats in the ballroom that night. And there were literally like security guards everywhere. There were metal detectors set up, and it was co-sponsored by the School of Law, and it was co-sponsored by the Political Science Department. Chancellor shows up wearing a bow tie in the front seat. Like everyone's out. Like this is a big deal. You got to respect Michael Oren, And I think that really upset me. The fact that like titles and prestige and things were given to people who ought to deserve the opposite. People who are. It's no secret that Israel has been condemned by more than 100 UN resolutions. It's no secret that they committed war crimes. It's obvious that these people that the government of Israel is committing very serious crimes against human rights, and it's even more blatantly obvious that Michael Oren is complicit in them and directly involved in them as a member of the IDF, and then defending them in the public. So I was really upset, particularly by the way he was treated on campus, and I felt like something needs to be said about that. That we shouldn't just be going around honoring war criminals. That we should recognize that there's something very deeply wrong with that. So I think that was a big part of my motivation.
a follow-up to that. What were the consequences of your guys' actions, both positives and the negatives? How did this event impact your life, and how does it continue to impact your life today? Reflecting on it now, do you think you would have still made the same decisions you guys did then?
Still thinking. Consequences. I think you guys know what the consequences are pretty much. So no need to reiterate them. But basically, there was some administrative sanctions, and of course, some legal, criminal charges that were filed, which we were found guilty of. I think some of the cops that arrested us are here tonight. I don't think any of the administrators are here though. I think this is unique because the administrators just came to every single other event that you guys had this whole week, and are not here today, which is sad because I really wanted to say something to them. Consequences are important, but when it comes to certain things, I think we have to take calculated risk for certain things, and I think for the most part, once everything started going down, and once we were sitting in the courtroom, each and every single one of us kind of had a better understanding of what that means. And what I mean by that is sometimes when there's an issue of social justice, when there's a call to duty, it's important that we take the necessary steps to take action and fulfill our obligations, fulfill our duties in speaking truth to power. And I think whatever the consequences are, there's always going to be consequences to whatever you do, especially when it comes to facing the state of Israel and the Zionist entity. There's always going to be consequences. What we didn't expect, obviously, is how the university was going to react. I think most of us that night, to be honest with you, we thought we were going to go protest and go have something out afterwards. But here we are, 2 years later, talking to you guys about what happened. So I think it's, I forgot what part of the question, sorry. So I think from a consequences perspective, nothing really affected me as far as criminal charges on my record. I already had a job before then, and I still have a job, the same job today. And the organization I work with is actually happy about what I did, so that's not a bad thing. And it's a good thing, I guess, for the resume for this organization. Osama obviously handled business aside of doing his master's. And this is probably going to go to med school like next year. So as far as that goes, I know a lot of parents are like, oh, you guys, just focus on your education right now, become doctors, become lawyers, and then you can speak out. As if like all the doctors and lawyers in our community are speaking out right now. And I'm just going to say, because I think people say that, to be honest. I think Osama knows, because people ask me that question sometimes. So basically, yeah, that's what goes on for hospital. What was the second part about?
Or actually, I guess you answered it, but it was, do you think you still made the right choice? Do you wish you did? How does it, you already answered, how does it impact your life?
Definitely think I made the right choice. I think the judge said it best when he was about to sentence us. He said that based on your standing in the community and the fact that you stood on principle, there's no need to give you guys a jail sentence because you're not going to feel any remorse for what you did, since you guys are just feeling good about it. So, just community service and you guys did. Sure.
What was the beginning part of the question?
It's alright. What were the consequences of your guys' decisions, positives and negatives? How does this impact your life, and how does it continue to impact your life today? And reflecting on it now, do you think you still would have made the same decision?
It took up a lot of time. I guess that's one of the consequences throughout the entire time. It definitely was a time-consuming effort afterwards, in terms of academic disciplinary hearings, the court, and everything. The positive and negative thing, I know Paul had talked about this a little bit in terms of, I guess, future. And this is one of the things that oftentimes parents and students get nervous about, parents for their children, is what type of consequences are going to happen if my student takes this kind of action. And for me personally, going through the application process for law schools, for some schools I think they hated it and probably rejected me for it, but other schools, thankfully enough, enjoyed it and they actually, they were interested into my application and they took an extra look at my application. And I know even like the dean of admissions at a major law school, one of the top 5 in the country, specifically remembered my application out of 8,000 applications because I highlighted the Irvine 11 thing. I didn't try to run away from it. I embraced it within my application, and I had to write down you have a character and fitness portion to applications in which you have to say if you've ever been academically disciplined or if you've ever been criminally prosecuted. And so you have an addendum, you add in a little extra as to what actually happened. But on top of that, I actually made it the focal point of my personal statement. And I think it helped with certain schools. I mean, thankfully I got into some good schools. So, so I don't think it hurts too much. I think schools, they like to see a uniqueness in the applicant, and it can help make up for other things. And on top of that, I'm sorry, that cough is getting me out of it. I can't even remember the rest of the question. How did it impact my life? It gave me a unique story to tell. Did we make the right choice? Yeah, I think we did make the right choice. And the reason why I think we made the right choice is the fact that we're up on the panel today, and we're able to talk about the protests and everything that's come out of it. If we had simply asked questions and answers, no one would have cared. That we had asked questions and answers, and it would have been a done deal after the event. But I mean, I know we've been all over California, we've been all over the country, to different universities, to different places. We've been on radio station interviews, we've been television interviews. We've really been able to get our message across in the media, and we've actually gotten a lot of support from all over the country and even internationally, which I don't think we would have ever gotten if we had protested in any other way or if we had just simply asked questions and answers. And one thing I'll address also is oftentimes the question comes up, well, in the climate of post 9/11 Islamophobia, you guys make Muslims look bad because you acted out of place. And my response has usually been that when it comes to people who are Islamophobic or who, let's be real. People who don't like Muslims because they're Muslim, not because of anything else. And simply, if you read an article about a Muslim doing something good, you'll still find negative comments. Like, oh, they're just trying to deceive us because they're not capable of themselves, waiting to arise. And those kind of people are not our target audience when we act out and when we protest and when we have our activism. But I think actually people with an open mind in America, which is the vast majority of Americans, actually when they saw us protest, they were like, you know what, I can relate to that because I remember seeing that when I was growing up and when I was in college, and that these students, we're all American citizens, are just as American even though they're Muslim as anybody else, and they have the same rights as us. And people would actually come and support us for that reason. Like, why, how come you're prosecuting these kids when we did the exact same thing? We had Jewish Voice for Peace even sign off 5,000 people on a piece of paper where they had protested Benjamin Netanyahu a few months after our protest, and they specifically said the reason why we're protesting this way is to emulate the Irvine 11. And Benjamin Netanyahu was the Prime Minister of Israel, and they were all kicked out of the room, and they later wrote off on a letter saying that we protested the same way that Irvine 11 did, and if it's crime, then come and arrest us. And they signed it, 5,000 people, and sent it to the Orange County District Attorney's Office. And so that was a sign of solidarity that came from Jewish Voice for Peace. And so we saw this all over the country. And I think it showed really, and it helped bring to light also issues of civil rights for Muslims in America. Do we have equal rights as Muslims? And all these issues that were kind of just, being discussed in the media and things like that, it really helped bring them to light and really shed a light on these different issues. So which I think was actually very positive.
Can you repeat the question again?
Consequences. Positive and negative consequences. Would you do it again? And do you think you made the right choice? And how has it impacted your life thus far?
It's really cold up here. So the negative consequences was pretty much what Tahir said: sanctions. We had to do community service. It wasn't that bad. But I think the positive consequences is people got to notice how to protest about this conflict in America, how to challenge power, and at the same time be protected under the First Amendment. Although we were prosecuted, I still believe that the right to protest, the way that we protested, was the right way to protest. And yeah, that was the positive consequence. And then, would I do it again? Of course I'll do it again. Not only because it's an issue, but just because how I saw the country come together about this issue, and how I saw Muslims come together, how I saw, you know, the whole community come together and support us, and that was just really beautiful. You know, there was town hall meetings, there were everybody like that I didn't even know was helping out, non-Muslims, Muslims, and they're doing their thing. They're doing the right thing. We're taking this cause and taking it to another level. And just because of that, just because of seeing all these people doing that, I think is a positive way to move in the right direction. And the third part?
No, you got it all.
I just want to say real quick about the negative impact. I would say, so I think the main thing mentioned is we basically got, so the university gave us sanctions and then we were convicted of a misdemeanor, right? So my attitude throughout the whole thing, I didn't know it was going to happen before, but my attitude throughout, and I think during most of the time of it was like what do you do? Like, it's not, people go through a lot tougher things, and it's not even their choice every day. So I'm not even talking about just for activism. It just generally, it's not a big deal. And then if we start talking about activism, we want to talk about real consequences, talk about what happens to Palestinian activists in the West Bank or in Gaza, or talk about what happens to activists across the country, much more serious things. So my general attitude was like if you really can't handle this heat, you know, get out of the activism game. You're pretty much opposing. So that was my general attitude, and I think for the most part that is a constant. I would say with the exception of like, the only time where I really felt like, man, this is serious, I'm really not liking this VA guy right now, was when we were in the court and then when they read, so my sister lives overseas with my niece, and they were there last summer, which is when we were going through trial, and they were there, my older sister, my niece, and my mom, and they were all in the courtroom. And so when they read the guilty plea, my sister just like goes like hysterical, right? Which is a misdemeanor, right? But I'm saying like for them at least, they took it very seriously. And my mom was just crying. She wouldn't stop crying for a while. And I think that was the first time where I felt like, dang, this guy done us dirty. Like, that's not right. We gotta make my mom cry. I'm not like this. So I felt that was the first, but again, even that level, you think back, these people's moms cry every day, right? And not because there's some kind of misdemeanor that he can get expunged in a year and he'll move on with his life, but because their babies are being killed and because of much more serious things that they never did anything to deserve. So as far as negative consequences, I just want to kind of say that to put that in perspective, because I know sometimes the rhetoric is a little bit, I think, overblown.
As far as negative consequences, not me personally, but I think there was a negative consequence as far as activism in general. I think people, when they think about protesting anyway now, like, oh, well, Irvine 11, we shouldn't do it like that because we don't know what's going to happen. And that's the exact opposite of what we want. And I think even had an effect here on MSU too, from what I've been observing. Is, I'm not saying you guys are like punks now, but I'm saying that, you know, I think it just generally has like a psychological effect on people when some of their friends get handled like this. So I think one of the negative consequences of the whole process was the effect they had on other activists across the country. I think that's why we try to reiterate throughout the process, throughout the trial. Don't take this to be the standard. Like, this is just Irvine, California. This is Orange County. Keep doing what you got to do. Israeli officials, oppressors, when they come to campuses, they better believe, they better expect something to happen. And I dare UCI to bring my horn again. Because believe me, we're going to be there. All of them.
To follow up on that point, in recent years, it seems as if Palestinian activism has been suppressed by the pressure from outside organizations and administrations on college campuses. For example, what happened with you guys in the case of the Irvine 11, or UNO's recent letter, and so on. What advice would you give to students who are active in the cause of Palestine and facing these challenges today?
On a technical note, if anyone does have the idea to do a similar protest, I can't give no guarantees like some people gave us before we protested, but I don't think you get arrested. I've sat through many of MSU events before and after this where people interrupted the speaker, where people interrupt the speaker multiple times, where police were present, no one gets arrested, right? And I think that's the way it should be. No one should get arrested. So please, it's just not factually correct to think that you would get arrested if you interrupted another speaker. If you wanted to just check out any of the so many YouTube videos of people interrupting MSU events, interrupting events across the country, nobody gets arrested. So if it's done properly, it's a good form of protest. If anyone here feels like they want to do it now, that's fine too. I remember specifically someone who was talking to me about, a friend of mine was telling me about a student on campus who was planning on interrupting an MSU event, and he thought it was like so new. I was like, no, it happens all the time. He's like, he didn't want the guy to do it, so he was telling him that he would get arrested. I'm like, no, he really wouldn't get arrested. And it happens all the time, so that's all I want to say.
I mean, you never know. What do you think, Chief? Will you get arrested? As far as Palestinian activism across the country, I'll just highlight some things just because from what I've seen with my work. There's been some really severe things that have taken against activists for Palestine. And some of those things, for example, there's in the Midwest, in Minnesota and Chicago, there were like 23 activists that had like grand jury subpoenas filed against them, where they had to show up. They had their homes raided by the FBI, their computers and stuff confiscated. I mean, some really serious things. Some of them, one of them had their bank account like pretty much frozen, so they don't have money anymore. So it's just some serious things that we've been seeing. Some students have been like brutally beaten on campus. Administration didn't really do anything. They're beaten by Zionists that were there at the event or something. So we've seen some really serious things. In Florida, for example, FAU, Florida Atlantic University, just last month, students staged a protest where they placed mock eviction notices on apartments, on people's dorms. And Zionists just went berserk, and they just started threatening them, giving death threats. We would call them, we would send them emails. And so it just blew up to a whole new level. So Palestinian activists or activists for the Palestine cause are facing some hardships. But there are institutional ways to protect activists across the country, and I think that's something that we're developing right now, so that the administration doesn't feel that they're only getting pressure from one side. And I think that's very important, because right now the only pressure on Drake or any of these other people on their campus is basically from the Zionists. Oh, why isn't she bringing this guy? Why isn't she doing this? Or why are they talking about this? And I think it's important to level out the playing field a little bit by making the administration know that any action they do take to suppress some type of activism will be brought to light and will actually be held accountable by the community when they do take these actions. So I think that's something that's very important to mention, that there are organizations cooperating together right now, civil rights groups and otherwise, to help protect students, activists, especially Muslim students on campuses, despite what you like to say.
To add on top of everything that has already been said, this might just be a kind of like a different direction. But one thing I would suggest in order to help out is to ally with other students of conscience on campus. And when I say ally, I don't necessarily need to take up their causes because it helps you out in your own cause, but to actually understand and begin to internalize the fact that all of the causes around the world in which justice is threatened in the end affect us, even if it may not directly affect us. It somehow indirectly will end up affecting us. So that the best way for students who are active on the Palestinian issue to have allies is to also get active on issues facing our Latino and Latina brothers and sisters with immigration issues, or to help out students and students of color who are feeling marginalized on our campuses, or whatever it may be in our society. The increasing income inequality rate, to really take these issues, even if it may not directly affect you personally, but to really begin to internalize it. Because at the end of the day, the issue of Palestine is not just a Palestinian issue, it's a human issue. And we're all human beings. And the issues that affect any one of us are all human issues. It's not about your skin color, it's not about your race, it's not about your religion. It's the fact that we're all humans and we share this world together. And that we should begin to understand and internalize that concept and really begin to fight for all these issues as if they are directly affecting us. And I think in that way, the strength in numbers really begins to show. And no longer can people be singled out as like, oh, you know what, these are just a bunch of Muslims acting up, these are just a bunch of Palestinians who are acting up, or whoever it may be on any issue in which cheap, you know, racial stereotypes are used to single groups out for protesting for their rights or for, you know, being active on their rights and the rights of human beings in general.
I have nothing to add, but tell you guys that like you guys have to stay strong. I mean, there's going to be people that oppose you. There's going to be people that, you know, demoralize you, and like you be down sometimes. But you know, you guys have to keep fighting on. You know, sometimes people take power and they abuse it, and abuse it, and then not allow you to protest in a way that you're supposed to protest at Irvine 11. But if you guys keep on fighting on and keep pushing the envelope, this country can truly see justice.
So I just want to clarify, at least from my perspective, I don't blame the officer like who arrested me or walked me to the thing at all for any of what happened. I don't think that that was really the cause of the problem. I think if we understand the situation, then we would understand that it was really the administration of this university that completely failed to protect the student body and to protect their right to activism and to protect their right to speak an issue even if it's unpopular, and caved into political pressure against the interests of the students on this campus. So I think that's really the issue. I wouldn't go into blaming officers who are really just doing their job and doing what the people in the chain of command asked them to do. I think it's really an institutional problem that we have to address within the administration of this university and the administration of universities across California and across the nation, like Lahad mentioned. So I just want to make sure that I would suggest that we should direct our criticisms in the proper direction, not where it doesn't belong.
Great, thank you so much. Right now we're going to open up for our Q&A section. Our mic is actually over there to my right in the front. Please keep your questions clear, concise, and relevant, and in a respectful manner if you could. And only after you are seated, your question will be answered. Thank you.
This question is for if each of you can answer it, hopefully. I was wondering maybe if you guys can explain exactly like what you stood up and said, like the statement that you said. Maybe like First you cough and now you laugh. Okay. You understand why we're laughing? We'll explain why. Alright. And maybe you can like explain why you said that, like the background behind what was that?
So just to set the stage, I don't know if you guys have watched even the short in the video, then you'll see, at least clearly you'll see Shaheen, who's the big guy. And you'll see him holding the note card. So for the most part, these are all pre-scripted comments. Some people decided to throw away the script and copy what Osama said, basically. But they were all scripted comments. We were all prepared to say something specific ahead of time. So I pulled out my note card and I tried to memorize it right before I said it. I think it said Zionism. You don't even hear this in the West video, but I think what I was trying to say was Zionism is Nazism resurrected. Judaism is innocent of what Zionism preaches. I don't think I got that out, but that's what the card says.
My card said something like it was like good for like a nice op-ed, but I don't know if it was good for a chance. So I basically responded to Petrarca when he after the fourth person he got on stage, he was like, "Shame on all of you," all that. You guys remember that? So he was all furious and angry. I was like, "Are you kidding me? Shame on us!" Like, so when I went up, I said, "It is a shame that this university sponsored a mass murderer like yourself to my born," and I think that was my name.
my card said, Michael Warren being murdered is not an expression of free speech. The only stand you deserve to take is in front of the International Criminal Court. I only got off the first half of it, and everyone got really loud, so I just kind of mumbled the only stand you deserve to take part.
Mine was a very interesting one. This is why all these guys are laughing. You can't really hear what I'm saying because I'm like on the far right, and all the cameras were like in the center and towards the left. And my statement kind of went like this. The buzzing of your planes, the roaring of your trucks shall never overcome the Palestinian spirit. And I said that. I said like the first part, and then cops kind of took me away. And then after that, I was like, Michael Warren, you're a war criminal. Michael Warren, you're a war criminal. And then until I decided.
There's a lot of reasons why we laugh when Hannah's statement comes up. It was like inside jokes between us during court.
I forgot to mention this. The district attorney, he was trying to present to the jury oh, we don't know what these guys said, and they could have said anything. So when my thing came up, right, they're like Mohammed Qureshi could have said Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse. So whenever these guys see me, they're like Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse.
Great. I believe the lady in the front had the next question.
So my question was actually about the activism that you guys were talking about. So recently we all heard about what happened at UC Davis, where students were protesting the issue of the fee hikes, I believe, and they were actually pepper sprayed while they were sitting there doing peaceful protest. So when students are so violently, when things like that happen to students who are protesting an issue like that, and then when you have students who are protesting such politically volatile issues like Palestine, that kind of fear that came out of that one incident of the pepper spraying, how would you advise, what would you say to students who kind of have a fear of that? Because I know now you guys are saying that, you don't have to be afraid of the police, you don't have to be afraid of this, blah, blah, blah. But that fear of the police, I feel like is a very big issue right now because students are being pepper sprayed while they're just sitting there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's being too nice, to be honest. I'm being real. I think the police do have discretion in what they do, obviously. And I don't know what the policy is, to be honest. I don't know. We try to ask this question to Chief Hennessy during the trial. And basically, do you guys have a policy for these kind of protests, or do you just take direct commands from the administration, whatever they tell you to do, you do it? And that's the question I still have. I'm still trying to figure out whether that's true. I mean, one of the officers could help us answer that. But at Berkeley, for example, when this question was made to the police chief over there at the Berkeley PD, he said that we basically follow what the chancellor tells us to do. And so basically, when the chancellor says, get these protesters off this area, the police will do whatever is necessary to get them off this area, whether these protesters are doing something right or wrong. And I think sometimes that's very dangerous. And I think from what I've seen in the past few weeks in learning with some of my ethnic studies professors at UCR and some others that have been studying this issue, is the tactics of police on UC campuses, their increased militarization as far as equipment and whatnot. I don't know, maybe Osama can tell you what he saw the day that we were arrested, when we went to the back room. Basically, they were getting ready for a riot. I mean, they were getting ready for a occupied protest. And this is only Irvine, so I was pretty surprised by that. So there are different things, but as far as when the students, I forgot what they did, but as far as the students and their reaction to this and their motivations to continue, I think it's always very, very important to continue despite what these actions are, because eventually there's going to be people held accountable. Eventually the administration is going to feel the pressure, and I think it's very, very important that we continue to do what we need to do. I know that it's very scary at times, physically even, to get hurt. It's something that we kind of contemplate on. And of course, don't put yourself in, try your best not to put yourself in that situation. But of course, the confrontations are sometimes inevitable, and they kind of occur. So I think that's just from what I've been learning and seeing.
So I would actually say that specific situation for me is a very clear example of misdirected anger, not from the students per se, but from the media generally. So I remember after that event, they put the 2 officers who pepper sprayed on leave, and the chancellor's like kicking it up in her office. She was the one who gave the order to pepper spray the students, right? I want to see her on administrative leave, and then I want to see her kicked off the campus. I don't want. I'm not suggesting that people don't have personal accountability when they do something wrong. I'm suggesting that when we want to criticize, we ought to criticize the place where it matters the most. And I think it's very clear on our campus and campuses across that the administration has a very close, if not a hierarchical relationship with with the police. So that's what I'm saying is that it's very obvious that people are scapegoating people at the bottom at the expense of people who are really making decisions at the top. And so it's very obvious to me that it was Chancellor Drake and the administration of this university that failed. And Chief Hennessy, we should definitely hold him accountable. And the officers at UC Davis and at Berkeley and all these campuses need to be held accountable. But I'm just saying that we need to understand also the hierarchical dynamics.
We're going to take shots at the top levels. I want to get a few in. Because I think UDOF also needs to be discussed. And not just on this issue, but on so many things where he's made ridiculous comments. And at least I remember my senior year when tuition fee hikes were going up. And he was saying stuff about, maybe he was being asked about students should sacrifice, and that's why their tuition should go up. And then the interviewer asked him, oh, well, shouldn't sacrifice start from the top? You get paid more than Barack Obama, who's the president of the United States. And his response was, give me Air Force One and maybe I'll think about it. And I mean, even UDOF has come out and said in the past that at any point in time he can take off his public officials cap and put on his Israel cap. And we actually saw that firsthand when one of the attorneys for the board of the regents themselves, Kim Penfield, was placed as the attorney for administration in our academic disciplinary hearings. Now, Kim Penfield is also a board member for the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League for years has taken very Islamophobic stances regarding Muslims and regarding different Muslim organizations in this country, as well as targeting the Muslim Student Union for years. And she was the one who pretty much wrote up all of our academic disciplinary sanctions, as well as MSU's disciplinary sanctions. And so this was someone with a vendetta against us who was placed in charge of our disciplinary hearings. Now, in terms of fear, I mean, I don't know if we're the right people to answer this, or at least I don't think I'm the right person to answer as to how to, like, get over the fear, but something that, for me at least, is when you turn on the news and you see people all over the world struggling and fighting for what they believe in and really willing to put their lives on the line. At the end of the day, none of us put our lives on the line. And we didn't really, think anything crazy was going to happen to us. We didn't have a crazy sacrifice. But when you are able to overcome those fears, that is really when you achieve real power. Because at that point in time, when you really feel like you have nothing to lose, is when you're at your most dangerous. And that's what dictators across the world are seeing in the Arab world. That's what Israel sees when it goes up against Palestinians and tries to occupy and oppress them. Is that people who have nothing to fear and who are willing to die for freedom, to die for justice, are really people that you can't mess with. And so really just trying to get over that fear and to understand the importance of sacrificing our own lives and to live for something bigger than ourselves is something that, at least, hopefully we can all try and do.
Oh, sorry, before any further questions are asked, if we can keep it to a minimum on the panel's responses. It's a lot of insight, but I don't think we can be able to reach all the questions. I'm sorry.
That's it.
No, that's cool.
Every time I talk, I stop coughing, so I'm just kidding.
Good.
Thank you guys for coming out. I was just wondering, in terms of consequences, did anything actually happen on the ground in Gaza in terms of your actions?
I'm sorry, hold on. One second. Did anything happen, like a change in Gaza?
Well, were people affected by your actions, or did your actions, were they received by them in any form?
I mean, you guys have been the brother today, he spoke, he's from Gaza, and he said that, you know, a lot of what we do reaches them. I think testament to that is the messages of support we got from like BSF University and other schools in Palestine, where students would send us letters saying, you know, thank you guys for risking your education for us. You know, thank you for being solidarity. Thank you for doing what you do and sacrificing for the cause. And you know, so I think as far as from the standpoint of support, they definitely received it. As far as actual change on the ground, Israel bombed Gaza in January, so that still continues. I don't know.
By the way, Osama, thanks for answering my question this afternoon. I mentioned to Osama during the afternoon event that I was also present at the Irvine event. I guess, and I want to hasten to add that I was not one of those people who stood up and shouted at you. I didn't particularly like it, and besides, there was no surprise. It was kind of obvious.
Sir, please keep it concise.
Okay. A lot of your supporters have portrayed you as victims the last couple of years. And I kind of get the impression by listening to you talk that you really don't think of yourselves as victims because you seem to be doing very well. And you're not victims because you live in the greatest country and the freest country in the world. But I seriously question whether you understand really the full freedom of speech in this country, because it seems that you only care about your own freedom of speech and you don't care about the freedom of speech of your opponents. I'm going to have to tell you, I really think that the organization in the past decade, through some of the speakers you brought here, and some of the events that have happened, have given this university a black eye. And
Sir, that's all. Please take a seat.
Okay, thank you. May I ask the question then? The same question I asked today. Why don't you extend the same courtesy to your opponents that you expect for yourself and which you have received all this week?
Thank you, Mr. Bass. So I would say that I absolutely believe in the universality of that action of protest. I do think that it is absolutely, if someone felt the same so strongly the way I felt about the war criminal Michael Oren who visited our campus, that they decided that they would periodically stand up, make short statements while we were speaking, and then leave the room, they're more than welcome to do so. If anyone feels like doing that right now, you're more than welcome to do so. And police can treat you however they want to. I would suggest that they don't arrest you. I don't think that's a good idea. So I think it's very constant. It's very clear in my mind that that's absolutely acceptable. It's a traditional form of protest that's been done for decades, that continues to be done, that was done before and after, on this campus, off this campus, done to the President of the United States, done to the Prime Minister of Israel. So to suggest that this is unique or different is just wrong. It's just factually wrong. And to suggest that it usually results in arrest is also factually wrong. And so I absolutely believe that if someone wanted to do that, they have the right to do that, and that they wouldn't be limiting my freedom of speech because they made a short statement and walked out. They didn't, light something on fire or do something that would result in the termination of the event. So that's very clear in my mind. I don't see any consistency problem in that respect at all.
First of all, just to get it very clear, Michael Oren did finish his speech, so his right to free speech was allotted to him. Number two is, this is not a soccer game. This is not a video game where there's two guys playing against each other, and there's opponents, and there's good guys and bad. This is serious business. Somebody is ethnically cleansing my people. Okay? Somebody is ethnically cleansing my people. 60 Minutes didn't interview me when they wanted to do this piece on Palestine. New York Times doesn't interview me whenever there's something going on. I don't get the same, attention or the voice that Michael Oren has as a state official. So like Osama said, when you're challenging a state power, you need to go beyond the parameters that have been established by that state power in order to be challenging it, or else you're not really challenging it, you're just going by what they give you. So this is something that I've been trying to reiterate over and over. That's why we still think what we did is right. That's why we think if something else happened, we'll probably do it again. And this is something that we keep on reiterating, is that this is not like a simple, oh, they're their opponents, so you should treat them the same way that you expect to be treated. I don't want to be treated like a, somebody who's committing genocide. No, please, I'm going to treat them differently. And that's just the bottom line. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything or say, sorry, sir, for not giving you the Middle East hospitality. I don't want you to give me the Middle East.
Even in terms of this type of protest occurring, and as I touched upon it with President Barack Obama, and President Barack Obama is, or was a professor of constitutional law at the University of Chicago, which is one of the most prestigious law schools in the country. And he was disrupted in the same way. He came out and said, hey, this is great, this is the American tradition. I encourage people, or it's great that people have the courage to stand up in a room and do something like that. But even on top of that, actually during our trial, we had someone testify who is the foremost authority in booing in the United States. He's a professor at UCLA. He got his PhD dissertation on writing about, there was a series of presidential debates during the 1980s, which he analyzed. And he talks about, he doesn't label anything as booing or disrupting. He calls everything audience interaction. And when he discusses audience interaction, he says you have in a comedy club, the person on the stage tells a joke in order to elicit a form of interaction. And this happens with all speakers. Speakers speak in order to elicit interaction. At a comedy club, it's laughter. At the State of the Union, it's clapping. And at all points of audience interaction, the speaker no longer speaks. He has been, he doesn't use this word, but he's been interrupted. He can't speak anymore. And so, in turn, during a controversial political speech, the speaker should expect to have both support from the audience, but also people who are antagonistic towards him, who may not agree with his views. And sometimes that comes in the form of people standing up and shouting at the podium. And in the process of our event, in total we took about 1 minute 30 seconds, all of us combined, in terms of our statements, out of what was supposed to be a total 90-minute event. And he said in his analysis of what is the percentage of allowable audience interactions, we were well within the realm of the general audience interaction. I never heard anyone give such a strange dissertation and very proud of it, but I thought it was really interesting, so I thought I would share it.
In terms of what you said about the courtesy aspect, you don't break the law if you're rude. You're not breaking the law if you're rude. And in terms of the First Amendment and Constitution, the freedom of speech goes as far as, in my opinion, or I think I wrote a paper on this. It goes as far as you're not eliciting hate speech. What we said wasn't hate speech. It was facts on the ground that were done in a manner that can be portrayed as rude, but it wasn't hate speech. And it was responding to the occupation that was occurring in Palestine. So, in terms of this protest being, it's just rude, it shouldn't happen on campuses. I think these kind of protests should happen. Power should be challenged in this way because it makes power uneasy, and that's how power should be. It should be checked at every stage, every stage or decision that's made. Power should recognize that they're affecting a population, and that population will respond in a way that is responding in protest.
I'd like to please just mark Thank you. I wasn't funny. No, it was that funny, really.
Alright, first of all, assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to start off by saying, honestly, you guys are my heroes. Okay. You guys have no idea. We look up to people like you guys, honestly. We look up to people like you guys. You guys know the truth and you're not afraid to speak against the injustice that happened in Palestine. And honestly, we look up to people like that. So, you know what I mean? I want those guys to know that we're supporting you. Number one. Number two, haters gonna hate. For those of you that didn't understand that, haters are going to hate. Okay? Which means just keep doing what you're doing, right? It's just natural. Haters gonna hate. Alright, and then just my question now is, okay, basically being a student at UCI, like honestly I'm confused. You know what I mean? Like, and then you guys did kind of touch on this earlier, but I am kind of confused. Like low-key, I'm kind of afraid to speak the truth. I really am. But like, how can we change these policies? Like, you know what I mean? How can we talk to admin and, you know what I mean? So, I don't know. Is it because we're Muslim, we're not getting our voices heard?
I think to answer that question, you can go back in the 60s or even before.
Keep it easy.
Back then, these kind of protests weren't even allowed. Brutality occurred, police brutality, dogs were sent down, water hoses were used, and those people fought on. Those people spoke truth to power. And just right as now, we should do the same. We should, we have the baton, we should pass it on. And we should keep on doing what people did in the 60s. And keep fighting and keep protesting. And do it in a way where you speak truth to power, in a way where it's protected under the First Amendment and under the Constitution. And I think, just gotta do it, brother.
One thing I do have to say though is that policies may never change, but you need to continue to do what you do. Because ultimately power might not change the structure of the way they believe you should protest. And that's just the reality of it. So you need to continue to do what you do. I mean, the real heroic examples are, if you look at Syria right now, for example. They're getting shot at in the street, their friend died next to them, and the next morning they go out and protest again. This is not like, unless I've learned now he's not going to kill anybody. No, it's like the system didn't change, it's continuing, but they continue to protest anyway, so sometimes that's not really necessary.
I just want to make a more general comment. I think one of the problems that, and I think I'm realizing this now more in like a master's program or like a graduate student environment rather than undergrad. I think in undergrad you're in such big classes. I used to walk around with shirts that say like Muslim Student Union, Islam empowers women, quotes of like Desmond Tutu and like Malcolm X, and it's fine because I sit in a class with 600 people and I never talk to the professor. But when you're and I think this applies for sure when you start working and stuff, when you're in a more closed environment, you're seeing people on a more closed basis, it's problematic. So I remember first quarter I would come and like I didn't do this on purpose, but like all my shirts have like everything I just told, like Council on American Relations, like every shirt has some like religious message, political message, and of course that's not really appreciated in that environment. People don't want to know. People basically they don't want you wearing your politics on your sleeve. No one wants to hear about that. You're there to do work, you're there to complete a job, and then they want you to go away. So I've been dealing with that too, and I think it's a tough thing to deal with. There's obviously a balance. You don't need to be talking about those things in every setting. Sometimes it's not appropriate. But I think there's also, especially in the sciences, I'm not sure how it is in the humanities or the social sciences, but in the physical and natural sciences at least, I feel like that's a real problem. There's an unwillingness to discuss about anything real, and the realities of our existence is that politics and religion and social conflict are things that we deal with. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't have quite an answer, but I think it's important that we try to find a good balance where we can still discuss these things and not be just like, bad scientists.
For the sake of time.
No.
If you want.
No, it's okay.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Good evening. This is a real question, not a rhetorical question. So I look at you guys and I see people who are really bright, intelligent, articulate, educated, and I think a lot of us may have the question on our minds: why did you choose, instead of taking the time at the end of the session to be able to really challenge what Michael Orman was going to say? And I can hear from the level of information, the way that you communicate, that you would do an amazing job at that. Why choose a form of protest which is so inarticulate? So inarticulate that you guys don't even remember the messages you said, and most of the people who are in that audience, I'm sure, never heard half of what you said, and so that's really my question.
I'm actually happy you asked that question. So, as you were saying, in terms of protests, You can have different goals when you protest. Sometimes it is to articulate a message to the audience and to everybody. And at least for us, I didn't think I was going to convince Michael Warren of anything. Michael Warren is used to taking questions, and he's a PR person. His job is to just spew whatever he is. At the end of the time, I mean, he's a politician. And everybody knows how politicians are. It doesn't matter what country they're from, they're politicians. And so in terms of protesting, you have, sometimes when you protest, the goal is to educate the audience regarding, the event or whatever it may be. Other times it's to send a message directly. And for us, the main priority and the main goal of the protest was to send a message directly to Michael Warren. And for us, at least, the way in which we could go about doing that and amplify our voices, because there is this disparity within the power structure in the room. And he's up on the stage and holding the microphone while the rest of us are out in the audience. Besides what Dr. talked about in terms of state power, there is that discrepancy just in terms of who's delivering the lecture and who's receiving the information. And the best way in order to amplify our voices, because at the end of the day, question and answers, you may ask a tough question, but Michael Warren still controls the mic. And that disparity in power, we had to find a way to overcome. And the best way to overcome that disparity in power is to use what we have to our advantage. It's almost like guerrilla tactics, where you can't use the conventional methods that are being used because you don't have the same equipment, you don't have the same, the dynamics of power is completely different. And for us, and I guess just to repeat it, Michael Warren represents state power, and states oftentimes attempt to enhance and legitimize their power by allowing for certain forms of dissent. And in the framework of this event, Michael Warren was allowing for dissent in the forms of question and answers. And for us to really challenge Michael Warren, we had to go outside of that framework. And we had to, and I think Professor Rachel Rod, who's a professor here at the university, she described it the best. She was like, the protest was twofold. At one level, it was protesting the policies of Israel, and on a second level, it was protesting the structure of the event and the nature of the event itself. And the way in which that happened was by standing up periodically throughout the lecture and just kind of throwing that curveball, the element of surprise that we had. And I think Michael Warren will forever remember that night. And even, I know on his Wikipedia, it says, February 8, 2010, Michael Warren was disrupted by 10 students. Anytime Michael Warren is mentioned in the news, I get a Google alert about it because it mentions, at the University of California, Irvine, it'll be a random article that mentions Michael Warren, and right afterwards it mentions us. And so for us, I think that is the accomplishment of our protest, that Michael Warren forever will have the stigma of having been disrupted. And it's actually really weird. I was giving a talk at a class this past Tuesday, and some girl actually comes up to me and is like, hey, I was reading about Michael Warren and I heard about Irvine 11 on it, and I looked you up and I actually saw you in a video, and it's really cool. And so it's kind of crazy how some girl somewhere in the world read about Michael Warren in a random article and decided to do a little bit more research, and she saw the protest. And in that way we were able to also amplify our message, and I think it just goes to show as how much we're able to amplify it, and that Tel Aviv and the Israeli government got the message, and that was the main goal, was to make sure Israel got the message. And I think even we saw a news article out of an Israeli paper in which they said they were reconsidering this tactic of using college campuses as a rallying point for Israeli speakers to come and speak at those campuses, like high-profile Israeli speakers, because of what had happened in the past few months, not just here at MSU Irvine, but at other places across the country. And I think we have to be viewed within the larger global context of pro-Palestinian activism in that sense.
I always sometimes get that question. I'm thinking to myself, like, what would I have told Michael Warren? Sir, why are you killing white people? Sir, can you stop please using phosphorus bombs on them? I mean, what am I going to tell Michael Warren? You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I was thinking about, is that I'm not really there to talk to him. I'm there to protest him. That's what I want to do. I want to protest this guy, because he's actively engaged in the genocide of my people. So that's what I'm not there to have like a nice tea dinner with him or something. It's not about asking questions or getting the audience to believe what you're saying. It's really to protest, and that's what protest is all about. And I think that's really ultimately the bottom line.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah, this will be the last question meeting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hi. I've noticed a number of what seem to be paradoxes in statements of the four of you. On the one hand, we have this being a tactic that's done all the time, is no surprise. yet Michael Oren will never forget it. Could you guys clarify exactly what you wanted to do, how you organized beforehand to do it, and what you claim to be the results are different from extortion?
I don't know how extortion fits into it, but in terms of the paradox, yeah, it does happen all the time to different speakers across the country.
I've never seen it.
I can bring up if you want to go on the district attorney's website and the evidence file, and it's all there. It's happened on this campus multiple times, in which speakers have had the microphone taken away from them, and events have been completely shut down. We saw it in 2009 with tuition fee hike protests, where we went across every single lecture hall on campus, and we went through and we disrupted every single one, completely disrupted it. And then we saw it with President Obama. We've seen Code Pink do it to Donald Rumsfeld, so many different people. It happens all the time. It just never really gets that much publicity. Now the paradox, that's why will Michael Oren remember it if it happens so much, is that it doesn't really happen to Michael Oren that often. It's the truth. I mean, it's happened to him a few times since. But I think he will remember this one because you remember things like this. And the type of hoopla and everything that was created around it, I think it's something he'll remember. And I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess, I mean, the planning. In terms of planning, actually was modeled after another form of protest that had occurred at the University of Chicago. And we actually called our protest the University of Chicago style protest. And what had happened there was Ehud Olmert, what his position at the time? He was a former prime minister of Israel, and he was giving a lecture, and 30 students and a professor individually disrupted his talk. No one was academically disciplined, nobody was arrested, and we actually modeled our protest after theirs in terms of the style of it. And what else was the question?
I just want to add on a little bit. In terms of like our goal, which was to show that like this university is biased. I mean, if you're gonna have this ambassador come, Michael Oren, and portray a one-sided, event or one-sided, he's such a big ambassador, and the biggest ambassador or official to come on campus, and you have no one to challenge him. He can say whatever he wants. Who's gonna challenge him? He has a mic. He has police in the back. He has cameras, like nobody can challenge him. Q&A, he's in control. And our goal was to show that this university is really biased. It stands with one side, stands with the it's pro-Israeli. And I felt like no Palestinian speaker has been endorsed in or at UCI. So, I mean, if you want to create this marketplace of free ideas at this university, you can't censor the ideas. You need to have all ideas come in that marketplace, and based on people go through and try to find the truth.
And in terms of marketplace of ideas, actually, after everything had happened, Michael Oren wrote a letter to the university, or to the New U, the campus newspaper, saying, sorry, I have the cough drop stuck in the wrong. To the New U saying, I would love to come back to UCI, while using a bunch of Islamophobic rhetoric. We actually had a letter written back to him saying, we would love for you to come back, but this time, how about someone of your stature occupy the stage with you, so that we can have a real dialogue. And we proposed Norman Finkelstein, and he never replied. So, I mean, we're not opposed to dialogue or discussion or all these things, but yeah, he wasn't down.
All right, I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank the panel for coming up and speaking tonight, and I'd like to thank you all for attending our Palestinian. We hope you guys found the discussion we shared over this week very enlightening, and God willing, or inshallah, that we can actually formulate some action out of this dialogue. For more information about our future events, please visit our website at uci.msu.com. And for all MSU members inside, we will be praying our Isha prayer at 9:45, just kind of soon. And thank you everyone, please have a good night.